Time moved from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern Time. I apologize for that. The time change due to just me waking up late. I don't really know why I put it for 7 a.m. I should have put it for a little bit later. And also, I'm feeling slightly under the weather, as you can see, but I'm still gonna complete this video. Just waiting for a couple of people to come in here, and then I'm just going to get right into it as I do with my morning videos. The evening ones, when I have more time, I kind of wait a while to see who's going to jump in. But when I'm doing my videos in the morning, I just get right into them and people can catch them on the replay. So I want to talk about trauma bonding. I know that people commonly know trauma bonding in relationships, and the most typical kind that people know of is when one person is kind of manipulating the other and using their trauma to form this bond that simulates love in a way. So let's say one partner is being abused by the other, but then that partner is like bigging themselves up to the other partner and being like, I'm also your savior, I'm also your hero, I'm the only one that can handle your problems, I'm the only one who can handle your issues, I do this for you, I do that for you. And making the person have some kind of a dependency on them, which they feel is love, especially if, let's say, maybe they have low self-esteem, or maybe they haven't experienced healthy relationships before. And that's kind of a common type of trauma bond that a lot of people know and can identify. But there's other kinds of trauma bonds that are not so easily identifiable. And one of them, I would say, is a trauma bond between friends. And it's almost like a codependency type of thing. Good morning, Rory. It is cold and rainy in my city as well. It is definitely cold and rainy here as well. And it's probably impacting my wellness a little bit at this point, anyways. But yeah, sometimes. So I wanted to give some examples, or an example for me. There was a time in my life. Good morning, Kira. There was a time in my life when I was at a very low point. And that low point was basically when my mental health symptoms were at their worst. And I tried to tell friends about it. I tried to tell good friends about it. There was a few that were really, they listened to me and, they tried to help me with whatever I needed. But there was a lot who just kind of disappeared on me. So I remember going to group support, a therapy group support, and I met a friend at that group support. I'm going through the same thing. Mental health is real. Anyways, I came on to listen. Yeah, so I met a friend. I met multiple friends, but I'm talking about this main person that I met at a group support. And we became friends. And the way how we became friends is that we were talking about our traumas that we experienced. She was talking about her traumas. I was talking about my traumas. And it was amazing for that time because I couldn't talk to my family. Oh, Florida. Yeah, praying for those people who are in Florida. I can deal with the amount and the type of rain that we have over here. But yeah, she would talk about her traumas and I would talk about my traumas, and we bonded because of that. We had similar backgrounds, we had similar experiences with family, similar experiences with friends. So when we would come together at that program, we would hang out, we would share stories about different bad things that have gone on in our lives, and we would connect, and then we would hang out outside of that support group and outside of that program. We exchanged numbers, we were hanging out. The thing about that relationship, it was fine for that time. It was fine for the time that I was in. And then I started to do some self work. I started to do some self work in therapy where I would talk to my therapist and we would figure out ways for healing and ways for me to get better. And I started to get better. I started to feel better. I started to tap into more positive things and more positive sources. And that's not to say I couldn't have kept this friend, because I'm not going to sit here and say you have to throw away that person that you trauma bonded with, but I'm just giving you my example. As I started to change, as I started to heal, as I started to improve everything that was going on with me, I realized that when I came together with this friend, or when I spoke on the phone, or when we hung out, they kind of liked to revisit those past traumas. There was nothing about work towards getting better, getting past it. It was just, I talk about my trauma, you talk about your trauma. And that creates this perpetual system of just revisiting the toxicity and not putting in the work. So it got to a point where I said, now this person is clearly kind of dragging me down. And I realized that our common bond was the toxicity, was talking about these negative things that had happened in our lives, was talking about these friends and family that had did things to us. That was our whole bond. So I didn't want to cut this person off, because I said to myself, excuse me, I owe her. Because when nobody was there for me, nobody was there to talk to, she was there for me. We had so many hours where I needed a friend, I needed someone to share with, I needed someone to vent to. She was there. So I felt like I owed her some kind of debt of gratitude where I could never leave her side, even though for a long time I wanted to. Somebody told me people are there for sometimes for a time, for a reason, for a season. For a time, for a reason, or for a season. She was there for all of that stuff. A certain time period for me, a certain reason, and a certain season. During that season, I did need her because I didn't have anybody else. I was appreciative of the friendship that we formed during that time. So, I was talking to my therapist about that at the time. This was several years ago. And the therapist said, it's okay to let her go if you have outgrown her. And I was thinking, that's pretty harsh. I mean, she was where I was not that long ago. And the therapist told me, like, but she's not serving you now. So when that happens, there's a couple of things you can do. Most people do not want to do option one, which is like a hard cutoff of the person where you're just, okay, you're no longer serving me. I don't think we can be friends. I mean, you have a right to do that. But I think the better thing, or the more, let's say the easier thing, and the thing that people would be more likely to do once you've identified that type of situation, is to set a boundary and to let the person know that you do not want to continue to just talk about the source of your traumas, that you want to talk about other things, that you want to introduce other topics. You want to start talking about positivity. You want to start talking about self-work, self-help. And typically, I mean, more often than not, if the person was only bonded to you to talk about the trauma, they are going to remove themselves because that's a form of boundary setting. To give another analogy about that, I had somebody who used to constantly give me updates about an ex of mine. Constantly give me updates. They said this about you. They said that about you. And I would at first I was like, "Oh, thank you for being such a good friend, giving me all these updates." Then I was thinking one day, they keep talking to you. The ex keeps talking to you about me, and you keep entertaining it, and then coming back to me and telling me you're a good friend to me. What are you saying to them? So I got a next update. Oh, just informing you that this ex said this and this and this about you. And I said, you know what I've noticed? I've noticed that you have all the updates. So it seems like you kind of get off on getting these updates and giving me these updates. And that's not necessarily an indication of you being a good friend. So I said, how about this? My ex is my ex for a reason. I don't need any updates. If you want to talk to me about something else, anything else, you can. But updates on her, what she's doing, who she's with, what she said about me, unnecessary. After that, me and that, so-called friend, I don't think we ever had another conversation. Women and men just can't be friends. She wanted someone to use in her friend zone. She benefits from having a man there for her at all times. But how do you, as a man, benefit from her presence in your life? Yeah, that's a whole topic. You must be talking about the previous thing that I was saying, though. I think you must be talking about the first thing that I was saying. But yeah, that's the thing about trauma bonding, too, is that sometimes people want to keep you in their back pocket. They want to keep you in their back pocket because they're not ready to develop relationships with a certain depth. And it's like, then I can have this sometimes opposite sex partner that I can just talk to, vent with, and that's to my benefit, keeping them there as a friend. But also, it could be keeping them from finding other people, from developing friendships and relationships with other people. But that's an interesting point, Kira. But yeah, I would say in friendships, it's a lot more difficult to identify a trauma bond than it is in a romantic relationship, because sometimes you just meet somebody, you vibe with them, and you don't really think about why you've connected. And you're like, this person makes me laugh. I'm happy when I'm around them. I don't have anyone else to talk to. And yeah, it was kind of narcissism. That's a whole topic in and of itself, that I might do one day as well, identifying a narcissist, because I have actually learned that narcissists present themselves in different ways as well. You have the typical way that you view one, but there are some that are disguised in other ways. I don't know if I ever got into a relationship based on trauma bonding, at least not fully aware that's what it was. I feel like the trauma bonding. So basically, to get into a relationship on trauma bonding, the reason why I even thought about this topic is because of Big Brother. And it's because of an interview that Jailer was doing the other day. And Taylor was saying she's not going to rush into a relationship with Joseph because She doesn't want to have a trauma bonded relationship. So in her case, she was kind of saying that because it was like, I don't know if I have romantic feelings for him. I'm not sure. Or if it's just a strong bond that we developed in the house from both being people who were ostracized and people who were misrepresented and misunderstood. And we formed a connection based off of that, or if there's something else beyond that there. So it's not necessarily that somebody you trauma bond with at first, there's no possibility to develop something real after that. But it's just something that you have to keep paying attention to and thinking about the whys of when you began communicating and revisiting that. So a second situation that I wanted to mention, which will be my last one, was actually a relationship that I got in where we were both coming out of very bad relationships, where we both experienced trauma and cheating and a whole bunch of different stuff in those relationships, and we began by sharing those stories. And then it was just like, okay, well, we both experienced this, so it's going to be so much better when we're together. Instead, I feel like there was a lot of work to be done on her part, and there was a lot of work to be done on my part individually that we were not doing. Because it's like, the thing about experiencing trauma is that it affects you. So you feel like sometimes I don't have to do any work on myself because I'm not the one who did those things to myself. Somebody else did. Somebody else did those things, so they had to do the work and I don't. But then you can end up in a kind of a toxic situation, like the one I was just mentioning, ended up being kind of toxic because we both had certain damage that was done to each of us. Neither of us was working on ourselves, and we connected based upon that past trauma and toxicity. So I remember at one point, she decided to highlight that in me and say that that's a reason why she couldn't be with me. And I was so sad about that. And I was like, I'll do anything. I need this person in my life. But after enough time had gone by, I realized that that was a trauma bond, that that relationship wasn't good for me anyways, but it was just something that I was seeking because of loneliness, low self-esteem, and it being a while since I knew what a healthy relationship looked like. So that's my little speech on trauma bonding. Know why you're getting into that relationship. You need to be able to identify if you are constantly revisiting traumas. And if you are, and if you do identify that, you have to ask yourself, can we connect on other things? Are there other things that we have to talk about that are more positive sources? I feel like previous relationships didn't work out because I was looking for the love that I didn't get from my dad. You know what? So interesting because we were having like a similar type of discussion, some friends and I, the other day. As an adult, I'm learning to focus on self-care, self-awareness. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I totally agree, Rory. Our issues as adults stem from our childhood. Yeah. Sometimes that's the thing. I can tell that you've probably done some kind of therapy and or self-work, if not therapy. Because a lot of times identifying those things that we ignored when we were children, or not necessarily ignored, but maybe just didn't understand. Helps us to know they're kind of predictors to the things that we go through and experience as adults. I've had some of those things as well, where I'm like, where is this coming from? And then I think back to different situations. Yeah, still actively a work in progress. Same here. I definitely relate and connect to that. I definitely relate and connect to that. Yeah, but anyways, that was my little talk on trauma bonding. I hope that it helped somebody, informed somebody. That took a lot of self-awareness. Hey Lisa, to notice that in your last relationship, did both of you realize that? No, that's what made it harder, Lisa. Excuse me. Sorry about that. I think the weather change is just affecting me. Um, yeah, that's the difficult part, Lisa. When the person tells you that you are their trauma, when it's like something that is happening with both of you, but they're telling you that you need to work on yourself. This person actually told me, I need somebody who's my peace. I need somebody who's my stability, and you're not stable. So that's part of the reason why I'm letting you go. And I was like, wow. But she wasn't peace or stability for me either. Matter of fact, I considered her worse for me than I was for her later on down the road. But when you desperately just want somebody in that space, you're not thinking about that. It was I was so sad, and I begged for her to come back at the time. In retrospect, I wish I had never done that, but that was a learning experience. That was a big learning experience for me. The therapist that I was working with at the time said something to me. They were like, this lady has given you a gift. I'm like, a gift? Like breaking up with me and tearing me down and trashing me as a gift? She said, the gift is now you have the opportunity to work on yourself, work on healing, work on self care, work on building up your self esteem, self work, right? So she said, this is the thing. When you're in a position where your self esteem is low, you don't have enough value for yourself and self love, you will go searching for it in all the wrong places. And you will be seeking it out desperately, reaching for people. I need you, I need you, I need you. When you start to work on yourself, value yourself, and love yourself, you'll be so focused on yourself, your needs, your own personal needs, and you'll be confident in yourself. And then the people are going to reach for you. And you choose somebody from those people who matches up to your standards rather than, you just ignore red flags and go for anyone just to have somebody in that space. And at that time, when you're going through that type of situation, you don't want to hear that. You don't care to hear that because you're sad and you're lonely. But I took time. It took, a good amount of time to work on myself, and she was right. Sorry about that. I'm so happy you came out of it with strength. Thank God for therapy. Yeah, therapy was very useful to me. If she was in her prime, she could not afford time to waste with the wrong guy. That reminds me of a comment you made on another live that I was on, Kira. I don't know if she was in her prime or not. So true. But that's why we have to work on ourselves first before jumping into the next. Oh yeah, some people don't do that, Rory. Like some people have to be with somebody at all times, often at the expense of that other person. They're damaging the other person because they have to be latched on to somebody no matter what. Okay, I just got out of this bad relationship. I got to jump into another one right away because I don't have the time. I can't afford to be single and I need someone to save me. Prime years for women 18 to very early 30s. This was when we were both in our mid to late 20s. We're both about the same age. And it's funny because some years later, she saw me how I was and came back around and says to me like, "Well, I've seen that you've changed. Now you're that person that I needed you to be. I'm so proud of you and I want to get back together." And I was like thinking to myself, if this conversation had happened a year ago, prime years from men 20 to 90. If this conversation had happened a year ago, I would have jumped at that. I would have been like, I'm so glad that she's gonna take me back. I would just leap over and go right back into that situation. But by the time she said it to me, I was looking at her like, you were the problem. And you are the problem. I didn't do self work to get back with you. I did self work to find myself again. And when I found myself, I realized I didn't need you. So I said to her, thank you for the compliment. And I also want to thank you for letting me go when you did. It was very difficult at the time, but it changed my life for the better. And I'd rather leave things right where they are. She was like shocked that I said that, but that's where we were for the time. I feel in my prime now at almost 40. I can't believe 40 is just around the corner for me. I got another 5 years, Lisa. Constantly growing and changing. It's important to find someone who will thrive, to grow and change with you. Yeah, that's true. We're always changing. Yeah, anyways, as I was saying, that was my little speech on trauma bonding. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to be back probably around noon to talk about another topic, which is this recent fashion show that Kanye West did and his choice of White Lives Matter shirts that he brought to his concert. Kanye is always doing controversial things. I feel like Kanye West at this point just does things because he knows that they're going to give his events a boost. They're going to draw attention and they're going to make him more money. Like he became a billionaire for a reason. But yeah, that's a topic that I'm going to be getting into next. And I hope all of you have a good day. Talk to you again soon.